Hello and welcome back to the channel. I know I'm a little bit late on this Loki episode 2 review, but I just had to talk about it even if it was a little late. This might be my favorite episode that Marvel has ever created, and I'm talking across WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki so far. It's incredible. It made me feel so many things all in the span of like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. It was just phenomenal. So let's jump into it. Let's do a brief summary of the episode and things we learned, and then I'll jump into my keepers and variants, which is highlights and sort of iffy moments. So Loki seems to be settling in nicely into his new job as the variant consultant for the TVA. And the clock, I know it has a name, but it's escaping me right now. Testing Loki's knowledge on the TVA terms and jargon and everything is a really good way to do exposition really quick and just give us an info dump as the viewer, or like clarify any definitions and terms, which was cool. Another thing that happens is Loki potentially getting an audience with the Timekeepers is brought in as a bargaining chip by Mobius, which kind of explains why Loki would be compliant with the TVA and what they're doing, because otherwise he'd usually just be wreaking havoc and kind of fighting this whole thing, but he seems very subdued. But then, just as you're thinking, oh, Loki's being kind of not Loki, suspicious, he does a very Loki thing and lies in his monologue in the tent to Mobius and the Minutemen, saying, oh, the Minutemen shouldn't step out of the tent or they're gonna, I don't know, get blown to pieces or something. But ultimately it's all a distraction for the variant to have more time to get away, I think. And Mobius catches this, which kind of proves that Loki might have met his match. Little bit. And then there's the big reveal, well, semi-big reveal, that the variant is hiding amongst apocalypses, which Loki finds out when he's going through all the files. And then, of course, the final massive reveal is that the variant who's been causing all of this trouble and damage for the TVA, that they've been gendering as a he, oh, he did this, he got away, we have to catch him. Turns out it's not a he at all. Pull back the hood and it's a she. Or what seems to be a female variant of Loki. I don't know if they have gender or non-binary or whatever in this world, but looked like a female, and turns out she's not interested in ruling the TVA or partnering with Loki as he offers, like, oh, I need a lieutenant. Yeah, no, these two are not pairing up apparently, because that's not her plan. But she does bomb the sacred timeline and now knows the location and how to get to the Timekeepers. So huge bomb there. Basically this whole episode is so good at just throwing info and making it all fit somehow, and giving us all of this world building and character building in such a short amount of time. Like, this is probably the quickest exponential growth in plotline that we've had in any Marvel show so far. And yet, we almost know nothing about anything. We don't know what the grand plan is, we don't know where this is going in the future, but we have a lot more info to deal with now. So now for the highlights, which I call keepers, as you might have known if you've watched the first episode review. First and foremost, Nexus events. Right in the beginning, we get this very pointed definition of what a Nexus event is, which is destruction of the sacred timeline and end of reality as we know it. Is that foreshadowing? I think it might be, because that seems like where this is all headed, right? Bombing the sacred timeline, finding where the Timekeepers are. I don't know, can't be sure. It's Marvel, there's obviously gonna be a lot of twists and turns along the way, but it definitely seems like Nexus events are gonna play some sort of integral part here. Next, learning about how Mobius's job is on the line, because the judge doesn't trust him and the Timekeepers are watching this case super closely. It adds a lot of character development, because he still believes that someone like Loki can change and be less of a lying backstabber, which is kind of heartwarming, you know, in a weird sort of way. But what it really does is it ups the stakes significantly for this mission that Loki and Mobius are collaborating on. It makes it feel a lot more important, like they both have a lot to lose, you know? Loki could be pruned or reset, and Mobius could lose his job at the TVA, which he clearly really cares about, as we find out in the conversation where Loki's like, you really believe in this, don't you? And Mobius is like, I don't not believe, I just do. And speaking of that conversation, the jet ski element was probably one of my favorite parts of this episode. A huge highlight, for sure, because I've never thought about jet skis as something so poignant and life-changing, but to Mobius, it signifies what they're fighting for. So that's kind of cool. And finally, the damn camera movement in the latter half of the episode. Oh my god, so good. I literally just had to replay that part where Mobius gets the okay for the mission to go with Loki, and Loki's sitting outside. Oh, just wonderful. And combined with the score, all of the camera moves and the dolly moves and the circles around the group when they're planning their attack on the variant, oh, just perfect. Perfection. And that's a good segue into sound. As always, I'm gonna be talking about sound this whole series, I have a feeling, because the sound design is so good. It just builds everything, like the emotion, the world, the characters, the plot. It ties all of it in together so freaking well. So the two main sound elements for me this episode were in the beginning, in the tent, when the Minutemen and the Variant are fighting. They found the most poppy rendition of Need a Hero and just went for it. It was so fun. And the second element was actually the clock ticking that was sort of peppered throughout the episode. I think they did it through percussion, but also I think it might have been using actual clock ticking, and combined it with the drones in the background towards the end. So those two things really build tension, right? Because you're like running out of time, and also what's gonna happen? Suspense building. It really reminded me of Dunkirk. If you've watched Dunkirk, and if you're watching this, you have probably felt that same similarity, but it was so good, so intense, but so good. Oh man, I wish I could play all the sounds that all of these clips and moments come with on YouTube, but I'm afraid of copyright strikes, so I'm not gonna do that. But just watch it through once again. Even if you've watched it, just watch it through once again just for sound. It's so good. And now for the iffier moments, the variants. Again, in this episode, I just had one sort of problem, which was that they talk about pruning a lot of different Lokis, his variants, but they don't actually explain why it's specifically the Loki variants that are causing them so much grief. I don't know if other variants of other people are also giving them this much trouble, but it kind of feels a little rushed, and I sort of had to process that a little bit more and sit with it before it made a little bit of sense. So that was about it. But yeah, other than that, favorite Loki episode, favorite Marvel anything creation so far. I'm just such a big fan of this episode. Of the show in general, but of this episode, oh my god. So the next one was kind of cool. Now that it's out, I can talk about it, but I'll do that in a different video. But this was definitely by far my fave. Let me know what your thoughts were, and if we align on anything, if we disagree on anything, and I'll see you in the next one, which will hopefully be in the next couple of days because I have to catch up on the 2 episodes that I missed. See you later!